So I still have people asking me or saying to me, I don't remember a George Brown in the class of '64. So if you look on the collage of pics of the class of '64, you will see a young man's picture named George Atherton that doesn't look anything like me now, but the picture's there. That was my stepdad's name, so I am George Atherton Brown, my maiden name, I suppose. Occasions like this don't just happen, and so we talk about friends. I want to mention, I know what is the gratitude that we all feel for Ann and Rebecca, all the members of the Alumni Association, the Hill Church, who have been working for months, intensely in recent weeks, I know, to make this all possible for us. So we thank them especially and their dear friendship. I have prepared some notes, and I know we're trying to compress the time, so my notes hopefully will keep me from wandering off into all the stories that I could tell. And of course I need these. I distinctly do remember Alumni Weekend, whether it was my junior or senior year, and watching those who had graduated honor classes of being introduced of 50 and 60 years at that time. And I remember thinking, boy, they look old. And I have a feeling that even those of you who are here from 40 years ago are looking at us and thinking, boy, am I going to look that old in 20 years? But here we are, and happy to be here. You know, in retrospect, those folks who were introduced in 1964 as 50 and 60-year honor class graduates graduated from Mount Vernon Academy in 1904 and 1914. And I don't know if there were any 70-year grads at that in 1964 program, but if there were, they were born in they were graduated in 1894. Look at the time span, and here we are. And that was just 1 year after Mount Vernon Academy was established as the first Seventh-day Adventist boarding academy for high school students in the world. What it says to me is how incredible the impact has been on so many lives over that 122-year history of the Academy. And it's wonderful to be here to celebrate still today. So last November, George Grow, our class president, and Sandy Zana and I connected on a conference call. George in North Carolina, Sandy in South Dakota. And I think Jim was listening in and helping to share his ideas to begin planning for our class reunion this weekend. And George was supposed to be here to offer these remarks. As I think most of you know that knew George, passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly of a stroke just over a month ago. And so it falls to me, as it happens, to offer some remarks on his behalf. And I'd like to begin, well, first of all, by thanking Sandy as we picked up the pieces with George to bring us all here today. But I'd like to begin with just sharing a few words about George Grow. In multiple calls that Sandy and I had with him, his love for others, his love for Christ, his love to tell stories was always so apparent. And he didn't change from the time, friends I've talked to that grew up with him, he didn't change from the time he was a toddler practically until he passed just recently. He was always an incredibly loving, kind, gentle spirit. Fun, but always a kind, gentle, humble spirit. And I remember well when we were here on campus, George was one of those individuals that there was no regard for who you were, whether you were a jock or not, or all these kind of things. He had a kind word and a smile. And even right up, well, and so when he left Mount Vernon, went to Andrews, met Linda. They married shortly after graduation. That same summer, accepted a position at Mount Pisgah Academy teaching math and science courses. And he was there for 43 years. It was the only position he ever held. You can imagine the legacy. Some of us were able to attend his memorial service. A lot of our classmates watched it live streamed. And what an incredible legacy he left. The day that George died, that morning, he visited with two different older gentlemen, probably his age or younger, a couple of older gentlemen, but bringing some joy into their lives, sharing words about his love for God and what it could mean to them. That's who George was. It's who he was as a child here at Andrews and all those years. And we're thankful to have had his example. 5 years ago, 2019, George made a special effort, and it was all his initiative, to try to reach out to as many classmates of our class of 64 as he could, to have a 55th reunion. And a good number of us mostly lived closer by, but a good number of us were here. And I distinctly remember George saying to me on that occasion that he wanted to do it because it could very well be that some of us wouldn't be here for a 60th reunion. And there was no way to know how prophetic his words were. Sandy and I have been able, and with some of George's help too, identify about 21 of our classmates that we know that have passed. And I know we're going to have the bell ringing program this afternoon. I don't know if some of you are hoping to be there, that honors classmates from all the different classes that have passed. But I want to take a moment to just quickly read the names of these individuals and these dear friends that we miss today. There's Janet Alaback. I'm using the ladies' maiden names from class. Janet Alaback, Barbara Campbell, Ken Cox, Martha Crago, Robert Gebhardt, Klaus Galug, George Groh, Joe Hadley, Sherry Jackson, Judy Monahan, Jim Monahan, Cherry Muchik, Carolyn Netzley, Paul Peacock, Richard Phillips, Charles Satterfield, Michael Sulin, Dan Sutton, Keith Thompson, Sherry Utley, and Sandy Wallace. Gone but not forgotten. And Sandy and I have identified about 25 other classmates, I should say haven't identified, individuals that we have no information about where they are and what's happened in their lives, and we wish we knew where they were. There's about another 25 who would really like to be here today, but time and distance and health kinds of things prevent them from doing so. So this brings me to those who are here. And There's about 20 of us, maybe 19 or 20 of us. We'll see how many show up today. And I don't know how many of that number have made it here to Sabbath school this morning. One of the people that hasn't made it here is a young lady whose name was Yvonne Bartley, whom I first dated when we were 16 years old, our junior year. Stories I could tell, sitting here with my junior year roommate this morning. Stories I could tell that I won't wander off and do. But we will celebrate 58 years of marriage in August. So, MVA does good things, you know. So with that, if I could just ask those fellow graduates from 64, stand to be recognized. I think they're going to do this in church again, maybe too, but still, here we are. There's a few of us here. A lot has changed. I'll close with these brief remarks. A lot has changed over the past 60 years. In 1964, you weren't allowed to wear blue jeans to class. And I'm rebelling today. It's my retirement uniform, folks. And, you know, I always have, when I show up somewhere where it's like, oh, wow, I always have guys come up later and say, boy, I wished I'd worn my blue jeans. So there's one thing that hasn't changed. This morning, I know that we collectively hold within our hearts a hope that burns within our hearts, a hope in the coming of the Lord, and that one day, we hope soon, we will be reunited with those loved ones and friends that aren't here today in an earth made new. Thank you.